Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and welcome to the Karey Carbaugh podcast, episode number 16. Hard to believe. I can't believe we've been doing this for 16 weeks now. But my name is Karey Carbaugh, and hence the name of the podcast, the Karey Carbaugh Podcast. And if you'll allow me for just a moment, I would like to welcome my Spanish-speaking friends in. We have a few followers that I've met in Mexico, so I always like to repeat my introduction in Spanish. So, buenas noches, damas y caballeros, chicos y chicas, niños de todas edades, y bienvenidos a el Karey Carbaugh Podcast, número 16. Tonight's topic is going to be a little bit different, although they all seem to be slightly different. I've had several people that have asked me to talk about life as a person with a disability or a person with limited vision. And as I explained in several of my podcasts when I did a series on this during the month of February, I don't consider this my entire story, though it's a piece of my story, and so I intend to sprinkle pieces throughout the podcasts dealing with life as a person with a disability, but in a way that hopefully will be relative and relatable to other people. And tonight's podcast is such a podcast. If you noticed the title of the podcast, we all do face difficulties and challenges, but we can figure out a way around them. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. If you think of a CEO of a company, what is their main job? Their main job is to figure out solutions to challenges. Or a manager of a company, their job is to figure out solutions to challenges faced by their group or their team. It's very much the same way with your own life. The objective of living a successful and fulfilling life is to figure out solutions to the challenges that you come across each day. And this is also, many of my podcasts have talked about self-esteem and building up yourself. This is a way you can boost your own self-esteem by figuring out solutions to the challenges you face. So that's what we're going to talk about a bit tonight. And before I dive into that, I will just share that I'm going to focus on two challenges primarily that I've faced. One that I deal with without even really realizing how I've figured out a way around it. And the other is one that I consciously have to solve, not just one time, but pretty much every time it comes up. So let's dive in. Let me know if you're watching this live or on the replay. Either drop a live or an L in the comments, or a replay or an R in the comments if you're watching it on the replay. And if you have comments or questions throughout, please feel free to drop those in the comments. I'm not going to try to respond to the comments just yet. I haven't quite figured out a way around that challenge, but I haven't given up yet. So stay tuned. I may start trying to do that from my cell phone, joining the live from my cell phone and trying to do that rather than trying to do it on the screen. But The first challenge I'd like to talk about a little bit is one that I don't even really think about. And this is part of the reason why when I've had people that have suggested that I do these podcasts to encourage or uplift people with a disability or people with low vision, a lot of times, because I've had this my entire life, I've had to deal with this my entire life, I don't even think about how I get around some of the challenges that I face day to day. It's just part of my way of doing life. But there's one in particular that's come to my attention recently. And again, it's one that I hadn't really thought about. But it's specific to computers, although I'm going to discuss a couple of different ways that this skill has enabled me to tackle other challenges. But I've shared in some previous podcasts and short reels that I've posted how I use enlargement for the computer screen as well as voice dictation, or actually this computer reads to me. But something that I don't even really realize that I do is memorizing the computer screen. We recently learned at work that we're going to be upgrading from Windows 10 to Windows 11. And when I was talking with IT and some of my colleagues that have already made the shift, they said it's really not that much different from Windows 10 to Windows 11. Things are just moved around in different places. Well, for me, that's a huge challenge because I rely a lot on memorization, memorizing the screen. I don't really think of it as memorizing. It's not like I sit there and study it for hours and hours and memorize it, but I really, in essence, memorize the screen. And I was trying to think how to describe this to someone who is not visually impaired. The best way that I could come up with is if you can imagine looking at your computer screen through a cardboard tube, like a paper towel tube, or if you sit back further from your screen, maybe it's a wrapping paper tube. A toilet paper tube is a little bit too short because most people don't get that close to their screen, although sometimes I do. But if you think about looking at your screen through a cardboard tube, closing your other eye, and putting your hand around the tube so that you can't see anything except what's at the other end of the tube. So you're only seeing a section of the screen that's maybe an inch, inch and a half round or square. In the case of a tube, it would be round. I actually see the screen in a square fashion, but this is an approximation, and I think it'll give you the idea. If you imagine looking through your screen, or looking at your screen through a tube, and having to move that tube around the screen to find the different sections of the screen, and find your taskbar, for example, down at the bottom of your screen. At the lower left, you'll find your start menu. Well, now with Windows 11, the start menu is in the center of the screen because Microsoft decided, for whatever reason, to center the taskbar. Now, there is a way around that, I've discovered. You can change the setting and left justify it. But you have to go through the settings to do that. And many of the other features in Windows have moved around slightly. Well, if you're looking through that paper tube, that can pose a challenge. Because now you have to figure out where it is on the screen and then reprogram your brain to move, instead of moving to the right for something, now maybe you have to move to the upper left. And so it's all about memorizing, even though I don't consciously memorize the screen. This is how I do my day-to-day work. And navigating computer screens at home or my cell phone. When Apple upgrades the iOS, they move things around sometimes. Not a big deal if you can see the whole screen, but if you're only seeing a portion of the screen because you have to enlarge it, or worse yet, if you can't see any of the screen because you have to listen to it, now things are in a different order, and it's much more difficult to navigate. And so without even thinking about it, I've learned to memorize the screens and learned how to navigate around them in that fashion. This skill also helps me when navigating around town. I've heard several people say to me, or had several people say to me, that I have a good sense of direction. That may be true. I do use cues like the sun, the time of day, where the sun is, whether it's south or west or east. But a lot of it is keeping a running map, if you will, in my brain as I'm on a bus. The bus turns right, the bus turns left. Keeping track of that so that I know which direction is north or which direction is south, especially if I'm going into an unfamiliar area. This skill has proven invaluable, because for someone who's driving a car, missing your turn and going an extra couple blocks or even an extra couple of miles isn't a big deal. But if you miss your bus stop, like I did here not very long ago when I was going down to one of the other campuses at the college that I work for, I missed the stop and had to go clear into Denver and back out again. That added about 45 minutes to my commute. Fortunately, I had some extra time because of the way the bus schedules worked, and I was trying to get to my meeting on time. And so I was either going to be a few minutes late or several minutes early. Well, by missing my stop, I figured out what I was going to do with that extra close to an hour that I was going to have by getting there early. I managed to get there almost on time for the meeting. I was a little bit late, but fortunately the meeting was a little bit late in starting. But this skill of memorization and navigation is what I wanted to bring out tonight. That is a way that I've learned to deal not only with computer screens, but with physical navigation. And so that's one way that I've learned to solve a challenge without even thinking about it. The other challenge I wanted to talk a little bit about tonight, I've talked some about this before, but not from this particular angle. And that has to do with transportation. Before I jump into that, if you're getting value from this, let me know by dropping a V or a value in the comments. I'm always interested in knowing if this is resonating with people who are watching this, or just a lot of rambling on and mumbo jumbo. So I'd appreciate you letting me know in the comments, whether you're watching it live or on the replay, whether you're getting value. So let's talk about transportation a little bit. This is a challenge. It's probably the number one challenge faced by most people with a vision disability. We can't drive, and so jumping in the car to run an errand is not an option. My typical Saturday involves about 5 to 6 hours minimum, sometimes more like 8 hours, of running errands. And I'm lucky if I can run 3 or 4 errands in that 5 to 8 hour time span, depending on where I'm going. First of all, buses only run once an hour, and they don't go direct from point A to point B. There is an option, Lyft or Uber, but there's a cost to those. And so I constantly have to think about, is my time more valuable, or can I afford $10 or $15 sometimes each direction to run one errand? This becomes a little more challenging if I'm trying to do something out of town. If I'm going to a meeting, going to a family gathering, if someone isn't coming through this area where I live, I either have to take a bus or an Uber or Lyft. Particularly when you're going out of town, Uber and Lyft can be quite expensive. Oftentimes, if I'm taking an Uber or a Lyft ride to Denver or to another nearby community, that can be upwards of $50 to $100 each direction. The alternative is taking the bus, which can be 3 to 4 or even 5 hours each direction. I recently took a trip that would have been about an hour by car, and because of multiple transfers and bus connections that didn't meet up with each other, it was about a 6-hour trip each way. So what would normally be about a 1-hour trip turned into about a 6-hour trip each direction. The alternative was an Uber or a Lyft, which was about $150 each direction. And so for someone in my situation, an out-of-town outing, even if it's only for a couple of hours, maybe to see a concert or hear a concert or see a performance or a movie or an activity, that becomes much more like a vacation. If you think of what you maybe go through to get to the airport and fly somewhere and then get to your destination on the other end, it's much the same for a person who can't drive just going to the next town over, depending on where you live. If you live in some place like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, I've heard is much this way. Transportation between towns is much more fluid and regular. But if you get into other parts of the country, your buses or your trains or your transportation may only run once an hour, and your connections may not meet up, so you may have to wait an hour between connections. In that way, it's much like a flight. People don't really think too much about flying from Los Angeles to New York with an hour or two layover in Chicago. But if you think about having to do that on a near daily basis just to get from your community to a community about an hour away, that's basically the challenge that many of us face that can't drive. And once again, I don't want to leave you on a negative note with this challenge. It's just a challenge that you figure out a way around. Maybe it's asking someone who's going the same place if you can catch a ride, if you can share expenses. Or it's dealing with the alternative ways of meeting the challenge, depending on what fits and what works at that particular time. But again, much like the first challenge, which I don't think much about, the second challenge I have to be more conscious about. But it's still much like being the CEO of one's life. You either figure out a way around the challenges, or you don't meet the challenges and don't succeed at whatever the project is, whatever the event is. If I don't figure out a way around the challenge, I miss the event, whatever it is that I'm trying to get to in the neighboring town, or for work. Oftentimes I have to go to the other campuses which are in nearby towns. I either figure out a way to do it or miss the opportunity, fail the opportunity, if you will. Much like the CEO of a company, or your own challenges in your own life. If you don't figure out a way around them, then you don't meet the challenge and end up missing the opportunity, or missing out on the benefit of whatever that challenge would provide if you can manage to overcome it. So that's basically the message I had for you tonight. I hope you found value in this. If you did, drop a comment and let me know. If you'd like more topics like this, let me know that as well. If you have questions that you'd like me to address, put those in the comments, and I'd be happy to either address those in replies to your comment, or if there are topics you'd like to see me cover in future podcasts, I'm always open to that. Let me know. And if you'd like to be added to my email list, I'm starting to generate an email list so that I can keep you posted on future podcasts, future private online events, master classes that I'm starting to look into. Let me know that, and I would love to add you to my list. Like I say, if you found value, let me know. If you'd like me to add you to my email list, either drop the word email in a comment or direct message me, and we can connect via private message so that I can get your email and you don't have to share it publicly. I have had a few people recently that have sent me friend requests that I'm not connected with. We don't have any mutual friends. If you're one of those people, if you could let me know when you friend request me, send me a direct message letting me know that you found me through one of these podcasts, then I can distinguish between those that are spam versus those that are connecting with me through these podcasts. That would be very helpful. So I think I've taken enough of your evening or your day whenever you're watching this, if you're watching this on the live or on the replay. So for now, make it a great week and do something positive for someone else. I hope you found this valuable. Have a great evening or a great day, whichever, and we will see you on the Karey Carbaugh podcast next week. Goodbye for now.